Her lover, that muscular stranger, was always in the shadows. I was left with nothing but the chilling realization of their victory. They stood there smug and ready to leave, while my world crumbled around me. This is not just a story of infidelity, it's a tale of cold, calculated revenge. "It's so beautiful here," Derek remarked, breaking the silence that had lasted for a while, catching his wife off guard. "Huh?" Zoe's reply showed that she was lost in her thoughts, and not really admiring the view. The trees, the mountains, the river. "Everything is stunning," Derek pointed out. "I suppose," Zoe responded dismissively, not seeming too interested in the surrounding beauty. Instead of getting annoyed, Derek decided to leave it at that. Darn it, what a waste of a weekend and $600, Derek thought as he drove west on a beautiful road. Instead of the usual route on Interstate 84, Derek chose the scenic Columbia River Historic Highway to try and make the most of the disappointing weekend trip from Hood River. Derek was puzzled about why Zoe had agreed to spend the weekend with him. Looking back, he realized she hadn't seemed happy since they left Portland on Friday night. Their attempt at being intimate at the inn felt distant, like she wasn't really there. And when Derek interrupted her daydream, it only added to Zoe's irritation. Fortunately, Derek was unaware of Zoe's thoughts. She hoped that enduring 2 days and nights with her unpleasant husband would pay off. Zoe successfully arranged for Derek to leave town and gave Paul a key to the house. Paul needs to finish everything on his to-do list now. Zoe was surprised by how much she disliked someone to the point of considering her current actions. When did she start to hate her husband, the man she promised to love and cherish? It all changed 9 months ago. She had just returned home happy from shopping with new shoes and a dress, but Derek's questions quickly ruined her mood. On Saturday afternoon, Derek was shocked when Zoe told him she had spent $1,000 that day. Zoe was puzzled by Derek's reaction, as all he could talk about was the money they were putting into their 1920s craftsman house they purchased last year. That's when she realized she couldn't stand Derek anymore. "I work on some Saturdays doing bookkeeping, but you went and spent $1,000 on clothes? What about the plumber's bill? How can you spend so much on clothes when we still owe the plumber $3,000? She didn't respond to Derek's questions. She just left the room crying and went into their bedroom, slamming the door behind her. Derek found the bedroom door locked. Zoe was sitting on the bed, thinking that at least something in the house was working. He knocked on the door and waited. After a short while, she opened the door, but instead of talking to Derek, she hurried past him. As Derek entered the kitchen, she emerged from the basement with 2 red Milwaukee tool cases. "Why can't I get nice things like these too?" she asked, holding up the cases. Derek looked bewildered. "I bought a power drill and a sander. I use both tools to fix things myself instead of getting help from a professional handyman or painter." She didn't know how to respond, so she chose to angrily leave the kitchen and tell him to go away. Their relationship stayed tense for the rest of the weekend. They didn't talk much and didn't kiss goodnight, even though they shared the same bed. When Zoe arrived at work on Monday, she was feeling frustrated and needed to talk about it. She ended up confiding in her coworker, Paul Roberts, who came by her desk to greet her and ended up listening to Zoe's problems. After being reminded by their boss to work, Paul proposed they chat during lunch. Between her salad bites, Zoe complained to Paul about being tired of budgeting. Paul listened attentively to Zoe's complaints. Paul thought Zoe was being rude, not considering her husband's feelings. But like any man interested in a married woman, he pretended to understand her completely. They decided to meet for lunch again on Tuesday. As a result, Zoe and Paul had lunch together every day that week. By Wednesday, Paul started saying mean things about Derek, suggesting he didn't realize how great his wife Zoe was. After just 1 month, Zoe believed that all the problems in her life were because of Derek, particularly the lack of money they had. Zoe wanted a house with a yard before having a child, so she suggested buying a fixer-upper. However, she ended up blaming Derek for the effort and money needed to make the house safe and livable. The plumbing, electrical system, woodwork, and floors were all old and needed repairs. Spending time with Paul made Zoe realize she had less respect for Derek. Eventually, Zoe started spending Saturdays with Paul instead. Her actions showed she had little respect left for Derek as she continued her relationship with Paul. The love Zoe had for Derek when they got married 5 years ago was gone. One day, Zoe was in bed with Paul, feeling satisfied after their second intimate moment. Zoe was deeply attracted to Paul, who made her feel incredible when they were together. Paul was able to please her 3 times in a row, something that amazed Zoe. The intense pleasure made her feel unbelievably good, almost causing her to faint when he was intimate with her from behind. Paul mentioned that he wished they could do it every day. Although Zoe enjoyed the idea, there was a concern. It sounds great, but not really doable. If I leave Derek, I'd have to pay for half of what we owe. I had a chat with a lawyer about it already. I have to pay for half of the mortgage and all the other debts from buying that old house that needs a lot of fixing. Derek's income is financially stable. He had watched movies like Body Heat, where a wife tricks someone to buy new parts when he discovered they had them. Derek wants to change the panel when we have enough money for it. That's how we'll catch him, Paul said. When he has sex with you, just remember the big rule. Make a choice, because if you're not fully committed, we're done. It's either everything or nothing. Hide my, reaction. That was my first time swimming naked, and it was great. But I was nervous a big fish might think my private part was food. Zoe chuckled genuinely for the first time in a while, wondering if Derek noticed the change in her laughter. Derek kissed Zoe, who responded eagerly, suggesting they go home to be close. He didn't hesitate, and they headed back to the car, continuing their journey west. Derek thought about how Zoe's behavior towards him had changed over time, from cold to affectionate. 2 months ago, Zoe's behavior towards Derek changed from being distant to affectionate again. This weekend, she alternated between being cold and loving, leaving Derek puzzled about how long this shift would continue. 2 months ago, Derek reached a breaking point with Zoe's sudden silence and lack of intimacy. He couldn't understand why she was avoiding conversation and physical connection, even suspecting she might be cheating. Every Saturday afternoon, Zoe would say she was either going shopping or seeing her girlfriends. Derek decided to hire someone to follow her. It cost him a lot of money, but after 3 weekends, the investigator said that Zoe was indeed shopping or spending time with a female friend. There was nothing suspicious about her activities. Derek had bad luck because the surveillance began after Zoe and Paul agreed to stay apart. Derek's delay in hiring a PI had big consequences. After their trip to Hood River, Zoe returned to her usual self. Derek was happy to see Zoe, his loving wife. They had a special night together on Sunday, followed by a nice dinner on Monday that Zoe cooked for Derek. They enjoyed a meal of lasagna, accompanied by red wine. The evening ended with them spending more time together in bed. Zoe was filled with joy ever since Monday when Paul told her, "It's all set." On Tuesday night, she spoke to Derek about having both parents come over on Sunday. Derek agreed with Zoe's idea, even though she mentioned they would spend Saturday cleaning the house and yard. Zoe wanted everything to be nice for their parents. On Saturday morning, they cleaned the house by vacuuming, dusting, and tidying up. Zoe made a delicious lunch before Derek went outside to mow the lawn. The lawn was tiny, which made the work quick. Derek began clearing the leaves from the flower beds while Zoe held the bags. "Can you tidy up the bushes too? I'll be making a chocolate cream pie for dessert tomorrow," Zoe said. Derek grabbed the electric hedge trimmer and the extension cord. He plugged the hedge trimmer's cord into an outdoor socket on the patio that had a safety feature. When the trimmer wouldn't turn on, he pressed a small reset button on the socket. No luck. So Derek tried plugging the cord into a nearby indoor socket. Over the next hour, Derek switched between trimming the hedge and collecting the trimmed branches. Before Derek could finish, Zoe appeared and gathered the leftover branches. Derek was about to store the trimmer when Zoe intervened. "You've been working hard all day, poor thing. You must be tired, and I have something planned for you later. Go relax in the hot tub, and I'll take care of putting the tools away." "Oh, Zoe, you've been busy too." "I've just been baking a pie, nothing compared to what you've been doing." "Get in the tub and I'll be there in 10 minutes, she said, pushing him playfully. Derek stopped arguing, took off his clothes, and got into the tub. The previous owners had put in a sunken tub on the deck, and the water felt just right. When Derek got into the tub, he removed his shorts since the neighbors could see the deck. What had happened? He got shocked. "I think he's not okay. Please help!" The person on the phone got Zoe's name and where she lived. Soon after, a police over them, dropping the hedge clippers into the tub. She narrowly avoided falling in herself. Whenever she was questioned, first by the police officers in their uniforms and later by Detective Turner, Zoe's answer remained consistent. She had tripped over Derek's shoes. Regrettably, there was no evidence to dispute Zoe's claim that it had been a tragic accident. The investigators discovered Derek's fingerprints on the glass fuses and the copper pennies inside the fuse sockets. Paul put on gloves before placing the pennies from the change jar into the sockets. On TV shows like CSI, they make it seem like finding out the patio socket was tampered with by Paul wasn't easy. It wasn't just another issue with the house's wiring. Blaming the accident on the shoes and pennies was clever, making Derek seem responsible for what happened. After talking to family, friends, and co-workers, it was clear that the couple was deeply in love and had a strong marriage. Two of Derek's colleagues recalled Derek mentioning problems in his marriage a few months back. However, they couldn't pinpoint the cause of his worries, and both noted that Derek appeared content in the past 2 months. Sal Coppolini was informed about his close friend's passing while he was volunteering in Liberia. He was assisting a charity in distributing water filters to villages across multiple West African countries. Sal received a phone call from his mom, who was in tears, telling him that his lifelong friend Derek had passed away in a sudden accident. His mom wanted him to return home quickly, as Derek's mom was very upset and needed his support. On the way home to Oregon, Sal thought about his friendship with Derek. They were very different but still close friends. Sal was a happy, romantic person with Italian Latin roots. He enjoyed painting and acting in school plays. After finishing school at Cal Berkeley, Sal worked in Silicon Valley for a small company that made computer games. When the company was sold, Sal made almost $25 million from the deal. People never thought Derek would do well, but he proved them wrong. He believed a powerful leader should run the country instead of Congress. Sal found Derek's ideas amusing. Derek was good at accounting because of his personality. They became close friends by playing football together. From junior high to high school, Sal and Derek were known as the top defensive cornerbacks in their league. They seemed to understand each other perfectly during the game, always cooperating. Derek didn't play football at Oregon State University. He focused on studying accounting to succeed in business. Sal went to Cal Berkeley and joined the Cal Bears practice squad as a cornerback. After studying graphic design in college, he got a job at a new company in the Valley. But every summer, he and his friend worked for Daniel's construction company. When Derek married Zoe, Sal was his best man. Sal spoke beautifully at the funeral. Zoe was emotional throughout the service. Everyone was impressed by Zoe's acting skills, which she learned in high school. She knew how to make fake tears by using a special solution on her kerchief. After the event, there was a small gathering. Sal noticed that Zoe was avoiding being alone with him, which had been happening frequently lately. Sal believed he had a good relationship with Zoe. However, things changed last spring when Sal treated Derek and Zoe to dinner before his trip to Liberia. Zoe seemed moody and quiet at dinner at Jake's Crawfish House. Derek even said sorry to Sal for Zoe's behavior. He mentioned, "I'm not sure what's been bothering her lately. She's been easily upset more often. If things don't improve, I'll make sure she goes to the doctor," Sal thought. Last month, Sal got an email from Derek, who was relieved that things had gotten better. After the funeral gathering, Sal and Charlie Conrad, the top quarterback from their high school, went to a nearby bar for a drink. They held up their glasses to cheer for their friend. Sal then asked, "Why is Zoe avoiding me as if I'm contagious?" Hadn't been intimate for a while, and she was acting unpleasant. He hired a private investigator to keep an eye on her for a few Saturdays, but nothing suspicious was found. After this, Zoe began acting kind and caring again. Derek thought it had to do with work. "She barely talks to me for more than 2 minutes," he added. The friends sat in silence for a while. Sal looked at his beer glass and Charlie stared absent-mindedly at the TV, lost in their thoughts. Sal finally spoke up. "I don't understand. One person claimed Derek skipped the fuse by using a penny, but that's not like Derek. When we worked at Daniel's Construction, Derek always cared about safety, especially with electric stuff. Maybe someone else did it." At that moment, Kyle Olson, another team member, came into the bar after taking his wife home. Kyle bought a drink to celebrate Derek, and they moved on from talking about the penny. The following day, on Sunday, Sal wanted to check if he had upset Derek's wife. He knocked on her door in the late morning, but there was no answer. He knocked again, a bit louder this time. On his right, Sal noticed the front window curtain shift. He looked over and greeted Zoe with a smile, saying, "Good morning." A short while later, Zoe partially opened the front door to chat, asking why Sal was there so early. Inside, Zoe was quietly upset at being discovered. She peered out the window to check it wasn't the police returning with more questions. Should she allow Sal to come inside? Could she pretend to have a headache? These thoughts raced through Zoe's mind until Sal interrupted. "Can I come in for a bit, Zoe?" Zoe nodded and held the door open for him to enter. Sal entered the room and immediately saw Zoe wearing a light robe. Sal admired Zoe's attractive features, but made sure not to ogle her. Despite trying to be respectful, he couldn't help but notice her beauty, especially when her outfit accentuated her figure. Maintaining his politeness, Sal asked, "How can I help you, Zoe? I've been busy lately and wanted to check if there's anything I can do for you." You were married to my best friend, and I wanted to make sure you knew I was there to help if you needed anything." Zoe didn't get a chance to reply before we heard the toilet flush upstairs. Sal noticed it too, seeing Zoe's quick reaction as her eyes darted up towards the ceiling, her expression shifting briefly to one of surprise before she regained her composure. There was a quick moment that caught Zoe's attention. She then surprised Sal by asking if he was trying to flirt with her. Shocked, Sal responded, "What?" Zoe pointed out his comments about being there for her and wondered if he wanted to be intimate with her as his best friend's widow. Sal couldn't believe it. He had no idea where that question came from. Embarrassed, Sal quickly clarified, "Oh my goodness, no. I apologize, Zoe. No, we haven't had much time to talk, and I just wanted to make sure you know I am supportive." Sal walked backward to the door, then outside, still moving in reverse. "Feel free to call me if you need anything." Sal then got into his rental car and let out a sigh of relief. Zoe couldn't help but laugh at how easily men, especially someone like Sal, could be influenced. Throughout the week, she played the role of a grieving widow convincingly. She knew how to pretend to cry and have red eyes, knowing the right things to say and even when to act faint from sadness. With some time to get ready, she was able to trick almost anyone with her acting skills, just like she did with Derek. However, she almost made a mistake when Paul unexpectedly flushed the toilet. Sal noticed the surprise on her face. Sal's face turned red and he apologized as he hurried out the door. "Men are so predictable," she chuckled, calling out, "Hey, Paul, you goof!" Meanwhile, Sal parked on the next street, chuckling to himself. "Wow, she got me good. She's really talented. It only took her a few seconds to get under my skin." His laughter stopped abruptly, replaced by frustration. It only took him 30 seconds to understand what was happening. The smooth kimono, the working toilet, the extra effort to get him to leave the house. "The sad widow has a new boyfriend." Sal remembered that no man was with Zoe at the funeral, the church, or the party. She kept a secret man hidden to avoid gossip and speculation. Sal felt overwhelmed and unsure of his next steps. He considered contacting the police but had no evidence to provide. Hiring a private investigator seemed like a good idea, but finding a trustworthy one was a challenge. Derek must have chosen someone useless for the job, and now he's struggling to find someone good. Sal wondered if the insurance agent who sold Derek's policy could help. Sal sat in the rented car and dialed Derek's mother's number. Meanwhile, in another part of the city on that Sunday morning, Bill Rowland glanced up from his newspaper and saw his wife working on her laptop. "It's bothering you, right?" he asked. Karen Rowland stopped typing and gazed at her husband. She was trying to write a mystery story, but he kept interrupting her with his cuteness. Karen was frustrated as she struggled to find the right words. Her attempt at a new hobby was not going smoothly. Karen stood up, tossed Bill's newspaper aside, and settled onto his lap. "I didn't expect to feel this bored after Hannah went off to college. Anthony is always busy with football, school, and his friends, so I hardly get to spend time with him apart from dinner. I don't have much work at the insurance agency, only about 10 hours a week. Most of that time is spent on the computer doing basic background checks. I never thought I would miss investigating cheating spouses." Karen Rowland reached her breaking point 3 years ago. She wanted to have more time with her kids before they grew up and left home. She was tired of chasing after people who were not being faithful in relationships. During one of her final cases, a client became violent and harmed his wife, her partner, and himself. She decided to sell her share of the detective agency to her colleague. For the first time ever, she stayed home for 3 years and focused on taking care of her family. Those 3 years were wonderful, but things have changed recently. She started feeling really bored. 1 year passed when Bill came home and gathered the family for a talk. He got a surprise offer from a big company in Portland, Oregon. They wanted to make him the CFO, which would come with a big pay raise, but it also meant moving from Long Island, New York to Portland. Their eldest daughter was thrilled because her top pick for a college athletic scholarship was the University of Oregon, out of all the schools that had offered her one. Hannah was hesitant about moving away from her parents when offered the opportunity. Their son needed time to consider the proposal, worried about leaving his friends. However, after looking into it more online, Anthony became excited about living near the mountains and enjoying outdoor activities in the Northwest. Anthony could easily switch from Long Island to outdoor activities like hiking or skiing without a long drive. He seemed like a good fit for the change. For Karen, it might be a bit more challenging. Originally from Brooklyn, she graduated from St. John's and spent 10 years as a cop in New York City. Then, she worked as a private detective in the bustling city. The question remained, could she handle the move? Karen thought carefully about the question, as she always did with important matters. She sat on her bed with a notepad and pen, writing down the advantages and disadvantages. After midnight, Karen went to the kitchen for a glass of wine. She saw light coming from Anthony's room as she walked by. She knocked on Anthony's door, waited for him to say she could come in, and then went into his room. "Hey, why are you still awake?" she asked. "Just doing some research, Mom, trying to figure out why it might be good to move there." "What did you discover?" "I think we should go for it, Mom. Kevin Taylor's family moved to Asheville last year, and he keeps emailing about how nice it is to live near the mountains." "He doesn't miss living in the city," Anthony said. "There are many things to do in the city, Anthony," his mom replied. "I know, Mom, but a change could be nice, don't you think? And did you notice how happy Dad looked when he mentioned the job offer? I think being unemployed for a while really affected him more than I thought. He always stayed positive and held on to hope, but I believe he was trying to be brave for us." "I want to be strong for him too," Karen said, feeling emotional. She kissed Anthony on his head and said, "Time for bed, sweetie. There's school tomorrow. Talk to Dad about your choice in the morning." Karen chose not to have any wine. She returned to bed after finishing her list, marked down one more good thing, switched off the nightlight, gave a quick kiss to her sleeping partner, and settled in behind him with a content grin. After the Rowland family's move, a year had passed. Hannah was studying at university. Anthony enjoyed his new school and friends. Bill was thriving with new duties, and Karen sought something to keep herself busy. So, Sunday night, thinking of ways to help Karen feel less bored. Bill was a great husband in most ways, but sometimes his silly side showed. He tried to make Karen laugh by suggesting he could become more demanding. "I promise to be more tidy," he said. Karen smiled. "Good, then we can have more time for each other." They hugged, both feeling grateful for their relationship. "Do you want to start working as a private investigator again now that you have your Oregon license?" "Not now. I might focus on finishing my novel first, but I prefer the idea of finding a guy to spend my time with." Bill was happy to see that Karen Baker, who had stumbled into his arms nearly 20 years ago while she was pregnant and single, had regained her sense of humor. She fought back with equal humor, but Bill was quick to respond to Karen's jokes. "I know the perfect person for this task. Tomorrow I'll quit my job and we can relax together all day." Karen and Bill were still kissing on the couch when Anthony entered the room with a friend. The two junior high school students quickly turned and headed towards the kitchen. Bill and Karen overheard Anthony's friend asking him, "Do your parents always act like that? Whenever I see them, they're always hugging each other." Anthony responded, saying loudly so his parents could hear, "Yes, always. It's so embarrassing." But Bill and Karen realized he was not being serious. Anthony always expressed his joy to his parents about being in a caring and affectionate family. The following day, Sal Coppolini went to the Montgomery & Sons insurance agency reception desk. It was easy to know which agency sold Derek his life insurance, since the Miller family had used the same agency for 3 generations. Sal quickly provided Mrs. Miller with the information she needed when she asked. To avoid any suspicion, Sal mentioned that he was following up for Zoe. He didn't want to worry Mrs. Miller, so he decided to keep the real reason for his visit a secret. In no time, Sal was ushered into Larry Montgomery's office after just a short wait of less than 5 minutes. After greeting each other briefly, Sal got straight to the point. "I heard about a big insurance policy for Derek Miller's wife, Zoe. I'm worried about Derek's death, and I want to share my thoughts with the insurance company. Did you speak to the police about this?" "Not yet. I don't have any solid evidence, just some thoughts. The police won't change their mind about looking into it again. I'm asking if the insurance company cares at all," Larry said, glancing at some papers on his desk. "But I don't think they want to spend money on investigating if the police think it was an accident." "Why do you think it wasn't an accident?" "I'm not sure. There are some things that don't make sense to me. Can you recommend someone for the investigation if I pay for it myself?" "I'm not sure if I've ever come across a situation like this before." "Why spend your own money?" Montgomery asked. "If Derek died, I don't want the killer to get paid," Sal replied. Montgomery was surprised by Sal's words. The Millers were loyal clients since his grandfather's time. He checked the file again. "I know a private There's another point to think about. If you're correct and this wasn't a mistake, the insurance company will benefit financially, and you'll receive 10% of the savings." Sal was unsure about the situation. "Doesn't the insurance company have to pay the person named as the second beneficiary in the policy?" "Yes, but they will only pay the original amount of the policy, not the extra money for accidental death, as the police believe it was an accident. So Zoe Miller could get $2 million instead of just 1? That's correct. Can you please have your detective contact me?" Sal left the office feeling puzzled. An hour later, Sal picked up his phone. Karen Rowland said hello and decided to meet later that day at the Benson Hotel lobby, where Sal was staying. As Karen drove downtown to meet Coppolini, she felt lucky but didn't want to get too excited. Yesterday, she was complaining about needing a new challenge, and today she received a phone call. On her way, Karen stopped to pick up the file from Larry Montgomery, along with support from the insurance company to review the police reports if necessary. Now, she needed a reason to believe this was just a mistake. Sal and Karen met and introduced themselves. They skipped small talk and went straight to the meeting's purpose. Sal shared his concerns with Karen, who asked questions. As Sal answered, he realized the importance of hiring experts. Karen called someone named Glenn to ask for a favor after hearing about Derek Miller's tragic death by electrocution in his hot tub. She mentioned that her family is doing well and had a friendly conversation with Glenn. The mother and a family friend are worried about what seems like an accident. The insurance company wants me to check it out. Can you help me meet the person in charge? Thank you, Glenn. I won't cause any trouble. I can come over tomorrow if you're free. Okay, see you in the morning. Say hi to Helen for me and send my love. Goodbye. Karen glanced up from her papers. I worked with Captain Hutchins on a special team after the 9/11 attack. He'll connect me with the detective in charge of the investigation. If things go smoothly, we might have an ally on the inside. Karen gave Sal a document to sign. Sal read it over, agreed to the terms without negotiating, and put his signature on it. Sal convinced Mrs. Miller to be the official client by signing more contracts. Sal would be paying the bills. Mrs. Miller was hesitant at first, but eventually agreed to Sal's idea. She promised to keep everything a secret for the time being. Derek's mother trusted Sal more than Zoe because of the strong friendship between the two boys. Captain Glenn Hutchins from Portland Police Department's anti-terror team met Karen in the lobby and took her to meet Detective Jack Turner. Turner understood why Karen had come to see him. In a perfect world, I would investigate a case thoroughly, even if it seems like an accident, because I have a feeling it's not what it appears to be. But we don't live in a perfect world, he said. Karen knew that Detective Turner wasn't trying to make excuses. He was just expressing the common frustration felt by many good police officers. Working with limited resources like time and money, sometimes not all crimes are solved and some criminals go unpunished. This is why movies like Death Wish, where avenging heroes take justice into their own hands, are well liked by many people. I have the luxury of focusing solely on this case, thanks to Mr. Coppolini's financial support, the detective explained, emphasizing his ability to dedicate ample time to solving the crime. If I agree to share what I find with you, can we work together? Asked Karen. Captain Hutchins mentioned that you are trustworthy and used to be an excellent police officer. If you agree not to do anything illegal, then we have a deal, Turner replied, reaching out his hand to shake on it. Karen knew that this agreement was important and would greatly assist her investigation. She shook Turner's hand in agreement. Could you bend a bit, but not too much, understand? Of course. Why did you leave the NYPD? You seem too young to stop working. Karen raised her pant leg to reveal her artificial leg. I lost everything below my knee from a shotgun. I could either have an office job or get disability benefits. I didn't want to do paperwork for 15 years, so I decided to start my own agency. I still catch criminals sometimes. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. It happened 10 years ago. I've had enough time to move on. Having a supportive family helps me a lot. In the big picture, my life is pretty good. Turner couldn't help but think about why he had never met someone like Rowland. He was currently going through his second divorce. He faced the prospect of paying for upkeep and supporting his kids for years ahead. What's even harder is only seeing his two children part-time and still caring deeply for his wife. Many people assume they can manage being wed to a police officer, but often realize after a while that it's challenging and rethink their decision. He knew his wife Anne loved him but couldn't help worrying whenever he went out. At a recent wedding reception for a fellow officer, one detective got drunk and started talking about all the threats their squad had received from local extremist groups. That night, Anne became very ill, and a week later she told Turner she couldn't handle it anymore. On top of that, she was 6 months pregnant with their second baby, and he cared for her deeply. Turner took out the Derek Miller file. Let's move to the conference room so we can discuss this privately. Meanwhile, Karen was examining the pictures from the crime scene. At the neighbor's house, there's a window facing the deck, and it seems like someone is there. Have you talked to the neighbor? We did try. The owner, named Gail Jones, explained that it's her daughter's room. Her daughter is 15 years old, and Miss Jones mentioned that her daughter didn't see anything. She wouldn't allow us to speak to her daughter without her being there. The girl agreed with her mother's story. Can I have a go? Asked Karen. Sure, but be careful. Miss Jones doesn't like the police much. Her brother is in jail for 3 years. Karen wrote down the names of the mother and daughter, then read Detective Turner's notes. In just 20 minutes, she reached the same conclusion as Turner. I understand why they closed the case. Everything suggests it was just a sad accident. But it all seems too easy, too perfect. I agree, but as I mentioned earlier, our team is overwhelmed. Many officers are now on patrol due to retirement gaps. New recruits are coming in slowly. Some things might be overlooked in the process. 4 to 5 years ago, the department would have supported me to do this, but not anymore. Are you fine with me doing the work? When Karen mentioned the word leg, she saw Turner glance down at her leg, then quickly shift his gaze. He tried to regain his composure. I would be silly to prevent you. Go ahead. I give you my approval and help. Karen gazed at Turner. About 6 months. And even though he tried to hide it, his marriage wasn't doing well. 2 months before he passed away, everything was going well in the Miller family. Karen managed to talk to 3 of Zoe's colleagues after some effort. Lisa Price's words were what Karen expected to hear. I don't want to gossip, Lisa said, hinting that she was about to do just that. There were rumors about Zoe and Paul Roberts having a romantic relationship. Nobody thought Zoe and Derek's marriage would last a year. People thought Roberts left Zoe when she didn't divorce Derek months ago. Now, Zoe and Derek are being affectionate again. The widow didn't grieve for very long. All we have for now are just rumors and gossip. However, things were not looking good for Zoe Miller. The image of her as a sad widow at the funeral was changing. And now, Karen knew the name of Zoe's alleged lover. She quickly found out where Paul Roberts lived and went to visit him soon. During her first week, Karen talked to people who knew Zoe and Paul. At the same time, Zoe and Paul were spending time at the Miller house, particularly in the bed that Zoe used to share with Derek. After Detective Turner said the investigation was done and Derek's death was an accident, they started hanging out more. Paul was feeling frustrated. Spending some time with Zoe was okay, but now they were together all the time. Ever since the funeral, Zoe had been acting clingy and dependent. Paul needed to stay focused on the reward waiting for him at the end of this chaotic situation. He had to make sure Zoe stayed close by since there were a lot of people trying to get to her now that she was getting a large sum of money. It was surprising to see so many unpleasant individuals suddenly showing up. Paul was annoyed because he had done all the hard work setting up, but now a few guys were reaching out to Zoe offering their help. Zoe, who now had Paul spending almost every night with her, began to question why she thought Paul was better in bed than Derek. When she snuck away to be with Paul in bed, it felt exciting and romantic. Paul treated her in ways Derek never did. She started to see that a big reason she enjoyed being with Paul so much was because it felt like she was tricking Derek. Derek was the one who wanted that house, right? Wasn't it? Zoe was pretending more during sex, but Paul was enjoying it. He was finally having regular sex after a long time. He was getting bored of Zoe, though. They were lying in bed after a quick session and Paul felt like he needed to say something. When will we get the insurance money? Zoe had been dodging the topic, but now he brought it up. The insurance people are taking longer than it took the photo from Karen and returned it to the shelf. It's great when they discover their talent, isn't it? Sharon's grades have gotten better since she started running. She has a GPA of over 3.6. It will be beneficial when colleges start offering scholarships. It helped Hannah get into Oregon, her top pick. The two women sat together and decided to use their first names. Gail made the coffee and Karen began speaking. Gail, I looked at the pictures from the investigation. Karen said crime scene, even though the death was officially declared an accident. I saw a window overlooking the Miller's patio and deck in a photo. In this picture, a young lady was watching through the window. Is that your daughter Sharon? Yes. Her room has a view of the Miller's backyard. Did she witness anything when Derek Miller passed away last weekend? Gail hesitated, unsure if she could confide in Karen. She decided to take action. Sharon noticed a few strange things, but nothing definitive. That's why we chose not to intervene and didn't speak to the police. We also realized that it had only been a short time since Mr. ______ had moved in. Miller is gone and now there's a guy living nearby. Gail, if I had neighbors who murdered someone for the insurance, I'd help the police. Can I talk to Sharon? Sharon will be back around 4 today. Come by at 4:30 and you can talk to her, he said. They shook hands and Karen left the house, hoping for the best. She got into her car, called Hannah. Hello, it's Mom. Even though caller ID showed it was her, old habits persisted. Can you have lunch with me and a girl who might get track scholarships next year? She could learn from you. We can do lunch next Sunday or another time, Karen said. Hannah, always helpful, said yes right away. Just tell me when, Mom. I'll go home the day before and spend some time with my family. I miss them, and I'm craving a homemade meal. Karen arrived back at the Jones house at 4:30 and met a younger version of Gail Jones who was 5'10". Johnson scolding her dog for digging up her garden again. That's when I saw this man walking by with a big bag of groceries. He came up to me and asked if I needed help with my paper. I was surprised, but also grateful for the offer. We ended up talking about our favorite books and authors. It was nice to have a conversation